The White Sox, will they be buyers or sellers? They've now played 57 games, a little bit past the 1/3 mark of the season. And our guy, Vinnie Duber, is going to be joining us in a second, but he was at Guaranteed Rate Field yesterday when Rick Hahn spoke to the media and addressed Vinny's question specifically. Vinny posted an article over at allchgo.com about will the White Sox be buyers or sellers on Memorial Day. We'll talk about that with him in a second after we hear from Rick Hahn. We'll also talk about his Liam Hendriks article because Liam Hendriks returned yesterday, so make sure you stay tuned. But Rick Hahn talking about being at the Memorial Day marker and what it means for the White Sox future, especially for the trade deadline.
Look, the fact that we haven't played the way we feel we're capable of on a consistent basis is probably the biggest challenge. You're absolutely right that first sort of marking post is Memorial Day, and we're probably going to have a similar conversation around the 4th of July about where things sit and where things go. I think the frustration we all felt in April, we haven't completely rinsed ourselves of. We know that this team is capable of performing at a level we saw glimpses of over the last 4 weeks, but not enough consistency. So that's what we're looking for going forward. Again, it's trending better, but not to the level that we needed to.
So as you guys kind of start a decision-making process or look toward a decision-making process for what you guys are going to do the rest of the way here, are you guys still in kind of wait-and-see mode a little bit to see if the consistency arrives?
I mean, what we want, obviously, is for the consistency to arrive and us to be in contention and obviously win this division come the end of the year. There will come a point where that becomes apparent that that's not very likely to happen, and at that point we'll have to make that final decision about direction. It's not a decision we have to make on Memorial Day. Fact is, our scouts are out doing their business, our analysts are doing their preparations so that we're prepared for whatever direction we ultimately decide we need to go once the trade deadline is a little closer to us. But from a performance standpoint, we know we're capable of more, and again, we need to see that consistency soon.
A great question asked by Vinnie Duber to White Sox general manager Rick Hahn, so why not throw it out to not only Vinnie Duber, who was there and asked the question, but to Herb Lawrence and myself. Will the White Sox be buyers or sellers at the trade deadline? We're closing in on June 1st here, Vinny, and after talking to Rick and hearing that answer, what do we make of what will determine whether the White Sox lean one way or the other? I mean, you mentioned the White Sox being 11 games under 500 before that game and being about 6 games out. Is it more about the record? Is it more about the division? Or is it more about the way they're playing?
Well, I guess it's more about both the record and the division, right? Because I think in a vacuum, this team would scream seller, easy seller, right? I mean, they woke up yesterday on Memorial Day with one of the 3 worst records in baseball. There's no getting around that. They have not really been able to climb too much out of the hole that they dug for themselves with that horrible April. That being said, they're in this division race. There's no doubt about that either, because the Twins, nor really any other team, has decided to bury the White Sox, which they could have done with how poorly the White Sox played in the first month of the season. But here we are at Memorial Day, now a day after Memorial Day, and I don't think they can make that decision yet. That's basically what Rick Hahn was saying, is that it's too early for them. Now, obviously, they are optimists. They like the team that they put together, and they would like to see that team play the way they thought that team was going to play. And if that happens, given this weak division, they could be not only still contending in this division race, but near the top of it if they get the desired performances here over the next couple of months. But right now, their record says sell, 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 but the division says buy, buy, buy. So, and that was not an NSYNC reference. It was just, it just happened to be that way. But yeah, so the answer to your question, does it have more to do with the division or more to do with their record? Well, right now, both of those things are on equal standing, really, and really preventing them from going one way or the other, even if the play has been what the play has been, and fans know that in any other year would make them an obvious seller.
In this division, why would they sell?
Perfectly asked question, and I would say they shouldn't. no matter where they're at the time of the trade deadline, because I don't think it's going to be too far away from whoever's leading the AL Central at that time. It could even be the White Sox. So I don't see anything positive coming off a sell-off for the White Sox. That just means that the rebuild's done. We're admitting the rebuild's done, and we have another one coming for you, White Sox. And sadly, say you White Sox fans who want Rick Hahn and or Kenny Williams to depart, I don't think that would happen either, because they've been numerous times of where they should have been fired. Last year, offseason, they should have been fired. They're back. And so they're going to be continuing doing this. So I would say just push forward. Like, you've already done the rebuild now. Go forward with more of it. I don't know if you have enough inventory to trade away. You have major league talent that, in a second, it's going to be a lot of overwhelming talent on the team, and the place to put all these hitters on the lineup is going to be a problem, a good problem, as Rick Hahn likes to say. But I don't know if those players that are not playing are enticing to another team. That would be selling off. They'll be looking for more youth, more people who are going to be MLB ready and then playing for years to come. So Colson Montgomery, who's been hurt, or Ramos, things like that. And so I don't know if those are attractive pieces to other teams. But if they are, you gotta throw that in. You have to, because this is one of the last years, because we've talked about it before. Lucas is probably going to be gone, or it's going to be a free agent next year, and you only have 2 people signed next year for your starting rotation. So I think you have to go all in at the trade deadline to get at least this AL Central championship, and then look to the playoffs and say, hey, if we get outings like Lucas Giolito usually gets us, if we get the Lance Lynn back, and if Michael Kopech turns into the guy that's shutting people down for 2 straight starts, and then we even talk about Dylan Cease, who hasn't been Dylan Cease yet, they can win games in the playoffs because their pitching staff and at their top of their peak is pretty good. It's at the top of the level. I think we also agreed at the beginning of the year that this starting staff, it would be the strength of the White Sox. It hasn't been so far, but we've seen glimpses in this month of May where they went, 10 straight, with a little blip in there with the opener start, where they went quality start after quality start. And we could see that continuing throughout. Lucas Giolito wasn't that quality starter today, but he did give you good effort today. If we get that type of thing, and you get a couple hits like you get today, where the bottom of the lineup's also hitting and then the top of the lineup is hitting, I think there's not the sky's the limit, but I think they can do some damage in the playoffs this year if they push all in at the playoffs and maybe win the AL Central. I know they've been underwhelming this year, but trust me, I know you guys feel it too. These guys can win this garbage-ass division just by default.
Well, it's a big if, but if they do win tomorrow, they will have won 6 out of the 9 series in May. So at least improvement. And I did like how Rick in his presser yesterday said, it's pretty easy to improve on what we did in April. So we'll take 6 out of 9 series wins. But what I guess I didn't get clarity with Rick was, they're not really sure whether they're going to lean buyer or seller. But even yet, he probably doesn't know. If they're buying, are they buying for the future? Are they buying for 2023? If they're selling, are they completely selling off, or is it a retooling? Is it going to be another rebuild, or is it going to be we're trying to make sure that Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn, etc. have the right start for 2024 when we're going to try to win this division again?
Well, I think that's the next part of that question, but it cannot be answered until they have an answer this way, right? I mean, I think it's all part of that. Have they made a decision, buyer or seller, yet? No, which means they haven't made a decision on the other avenues that they can take. I think what you just said there shows that there are options and there are ways that this can go, right? And I think that's what the next month or month and a half even could tell them. Herb is talking about, they can't sell because that means the rebuild's over. Well, does it? I mean, they could sell in a way where they're only getting rid of the guys who are going to be gone at the end of this year anyway. They could sell in a way where all the core guys stay, all the core position players stay, and it becomes kind of all right, they're going to try to get better for 2024. Or you're right, they could go a different direction. Maybe they crater and they say, all right, we got to do this over again. We got to work on the longer term picture here. Or they could get better and they could buy for this year to try to win the division. Or they could do what they always like to do when they make trades, which is say, well, we're going to go get a guy who has an option for next year and can help us in the year beyond. It's what they did when they traded for Craig Kimbrell, right? And it's what they did when they traded last year for Jake Diekman. Obviously, it was a much lower profile trade, but it was the same kind of thing being said by Rick Hahn at the time, which was, hey, this is a guy who can help us this year, but also, look, we've got him for next year too, and that can be a thing. Obviously, it didn't work out that way, but I'm just providing an example. So, there's the rental, there's the longer term buy, there's the longer term rebuild, there's the shorter term work, bolster up for next season kind of thing. There's a lot of routes they could go. And that is part of the answer. It's all under the umbrella of they've yet to make that decision yet because they don't know where this team maybe is going to be. They're, again, hopeful that it will play the way over the next month that they thought it was going to play all year, and it hasn't played to this point. But it could also go the opposite way, or it could stay right where it is too. And they could be, looking at this exact same, dilemma, which is, hey, the record is horrible, but the division is not out of reach. What do we do? Kind of thing. So time is probably the answer. Patience is probably the answer, which is what nobody in the fan world likes to hear. But it seems to be where they're at right now because I don't think they can make a definitive decision right now.
I hear what you're saying, Vinny. I 100% agree that they will probably do a combination or one of those things that you just mentioned at the trade deadline. But I would like, if you're going to do it without any half measures. So the old Mike Amentrout thing, just go all the way out. Like if you're going to sell off. Don't just sell off selected pieces to retool for next year. That reminds me of the middling 2012 to 2016 years where Rick famously said mired in mediocrity, where you're just trying to get the division, but you're not really doing anything to get the division. You're not going aggressively after it, but you're also not going aggressively after the tank. That's why I love the rebuild and what they were talking about there, because it was finally the decision to, all right, let's bottom out this thing and then let's build back up. And Rick did a fantastic job with the trades and acquiring talent. So I would love for them, and you already know my feelings about the actual general manager and the vice president coming back, but I would, if they're going to come back, just do a full measure. Go all the way in or go all the way out. Not the Lucas, you're out of here, Lance Lynn, and then bring in a couple or starters next year.
I mean, right now they're 6 games back, and you're saying, I mean, it wouldn't just be Lucas or Lance. I mean, as Vinny said, like expiring deals, that would also, I think, include Kelly because he's got an option, or at least Graveman because I think he's got an option. So they would be able to move some of the bullpen pieces as well. I mean,
technically, whoever has an option, but it's a $15 million option, so he's going to be on the team next year anyway. You put it with Liam Hendricks, and after what he did, and to come back, I would be absolutely apoplectic if they traded Liam Hendricks off of his team.
If he's valuable, I mean, wouldn't that be a half measure to keep him around? I mean,
yeah, you got
what
me.
Games are we saving?
I'm hoisted by my own petard. All right. Good job, Sean.
Vinny, what do you make of that? Because, I mean, I know some people have wariness in this city, especially with this franchise, because of the white flag trade, them being 3.5 games out and then kind of folding at the trade deadline, especially with this core. Herb saying go all out, but, I mean, at least the bullpen, I feel like that could be thinned out. I feel like you don't have to trade Lucas Giolito or Lance Lynn to go full out. I don't know if that is just dipping your toes in the water a little bit, but, I mean, if the White Sox are still 6 games out, I wouldn't say trade Lance Lynn and Lucas Giolito. I'd say keep them around and maybe move some of the smaller pieces to try to get a starting pitcher or 2 starting pitcher arms to fill out the farm that could possibly be an arm to maybe be the Davis Martin replacement, not even be one of the 5 starters for next year, but be one of those depth arms. I don't know what you make of the idea of putting a full toe in or the full foot in or just a toe.
Well, I mean, I guess I would point to this, the difference between now and maybe way back when the white flag trade was brought up, and Rick Hahn yesterday needed to be reminded of what it was because it took place so long ago before he even started with this team. So the difference is that they've been building to this moment for a long, long time. And Herb, you bring up, how you bring up the rebuilding process and the idea of another one happening. Rebuilds in 2023 and this era of baseball are not a quick patch. That's a years-long process, as White Sox fans well know, because this is supposed to be the final act of that process, right? This is supposed to be the winning time right now. It hasn't worked out that way to this point, but I think there's been too much put in to this to say, all right, well, we'll just, do it all again, do it all over again. I guess this didn't work. I don't know if you can officially call the time of death on this yet, while all these guys are still here, while all these core players are still here and still under White Sox employment. If you want them to clean house, that's one thing, but to, say that there's no future beyond 2023 for this group of players, I don't think that's really 100% decided yet, is it? I mean, if they believe in these guys still, why would you not, if that's the way they end up being positioned come July, why would you not try to put them in the best position to compete again in 2024? I don't think 2024 is being punted on at all. I mean, certainly 2023 is not being given up on at this point right now, but especially not next year. You got, again, I understand why White Sox fans would be frustrated by me saying that, oh, look, you got Eloy and Tim Anderson and Luis Robert and Moncada and Bapapa. They've had these guys for years now, I understand. But the point being that those guys were put on this roster to compete for years and years. And next year is one of those years. And unless one of them truly falls flat on their face and needs to be given up on, I don't see why they wouldn't try to if they're in the position to do what they can to get these guys to the postseason and give these guys a chance to compete, whether that means this year trading, buying and giving them more, to compete to win this division, or if it means, if they're out of it next year, trading a guy on an expiring contract to get this team some help for 2024 to try and be in the mix to win that division next year as well. So I don't think giving up is going to be the answer from this front office when it comes to this roster that they have spent years rebuilding to get to this point.